Are you thinking about starting your own podcast? Don't know where to start? Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to start a podcast. Let me tell you about it. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. And best of all, it's free. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Just download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello, Candid Mamas, and welcome. You're listening to the Candid Motherhood podcast with Roxy
and Jackie,
where we tell you all about the ins and outs of motherhood.
We share our own life experiences to prepare you for the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes along with parenting.
So grab your coffee,
sit down,
get comfy,
and enjoy today's episode.
Hey, Candid Mamas, welcome to another Tell All Tuesday. We're continuing our empowerment series, and this is episode 2 out of 4. And we're talking all about social anxiety today and how to overcome it. Because when you overcome your anxiety, it empowers you to start more conversations, meet new people, start new relationships. So you might be wondering, what exactly is social anxiety? And social anxiety is more than just being shy. They actually give it the name as social anxiety disorder or social phobia. And it is one of the most popular disorders that people have. So don't think that something's wrong with you because you have this, because a lot of people have this disorder. So what it is a persistent and extreme fear of being watched or judged by other people. And people who have social anxiety might also be nervous or worried that they might do something embarrassing. The anxiety can last for days before and after an encounter that triggers your anxiety. And it might lead someone to avoid situations or places with lots of people. And it can also make it difficult for people to take part in everyday activities like work and school. So, is it the same as being shy? No, it's not. Everyone feels shy once in a while, especially when you're meeting new people or you're in an unfamiliar situation. But shyness doesn't typically prevent you from taking part in activities and enjoying yourself. But social anxiety can. It makes ordinary situations very uncomfortable, makes friendships hard to keep. People with social anxiety often experience symptoms like sweating, blushing, shaking, and nausea. And generally, these feelings occur during certain stressful situations like public speaking or informal conversations, or when you're eating or drinking in front of others. So, you're probably wondering, like, what causes social anxiety? A number of factors cause social anxiety. So one of them can be genetics. Some scientists believe that certain genes can affect how people react to stress and social interaction, causing some people to become more anxious in social situations than others. It could be behavior learned by the people around you, especially your parents. So in some cases, children raised by people who avoid social interaction might grow up to have some social anxiety. And life events like harmful situations, being bullied, or more serious traumatic events that cause people to be fearful of certain situations can also lead to social anxiety. So I'm wondering, do you have social anxiety disorder, or are you generally okay around people, meeting new people and stuff like that?
I consider myself pretty much an introvert. So I typically don't really like to interact with people. I find it hard for myself to make friends and like be outgoing enough to make friends. besides like social anxiety, like they're like regular anxiety, like panic attacks and stuff like that. I've had those a few times, and we could talk about that a little bit later. Like I have one instance that I remember that I was just like, I guess maybe this would go with social anxiety, but maybe not. But so me and Rob, we went and we did like a march on Washington. This was during with like the Tea Party. This was a few years back, and there was like probably 1 million people there, and it was just so crowded. Like everywhere I looked, I started to panic, and I told Rob, I was like, if you don't get me out of here right now, I can't breathe. I like can't see straight. I'm gonna freak out. So like we had to get out of that situation. So I don't know if that's just like regular panic attack or if that's like a social anxiety. Later on in this episode, I have 5 tips, like 5 things that you can do when you have anxiety to help you get through it. Rob has battled with anxiety his entire life, and I've dealt with a lot of things with him when it comes to anxiety. So I learned these tips on how to I guess distract the mind, distract the person, so you don't feel anxiety anymore. But what about you? I mean, I'm not really a very social person.
I would say yes, I do have social anxiety. I think it's gotten better over the years as I've gotten older, and I've kind of had like have basically had to force myself to interact with more people because one, I have kids, and my kids, they want to meet new people all the time. They're very much like their dad in that sense. And like my husband, he does not have any sort of social anxiety at all. He can literally pick up a conversation like that, start it out of nowhere, and make friends everywhere he goes. It's so easy for him to make a conversation, but not me. I'm the total opposite of that. Actually, I dealt with it a lot as a child. I noticed the first time that it happened was I was doing like a Christmas play in church, and we all had to like go up there and do a little solo part. All we had to do was like speak a couple sentences, but I went up there and I just like literally, as soon as I saw the crowd, I just drew a blank and I could not remember what I was saying. And I started sweating. And my response was to just start hysterically laughing for some reason. So I guess it's better than hysterically crying.
Yeah.
But I couldn't stop. And that was just like my body's response to the anxiety. But also like my whole life, I've dealt with that, really. I mean, I avoided people. I avoid situations. Public speaking, no, absolutely never. Even in the beginning, like doing this podcast, I had to get over like a little bit of kind of like fear, because it's almost like public speaking, but it's better because I don't actually have to watch your reactions to me speaking. So yeah, I have a lot of experience with this.
You see, Rob has the same, like he has more like panic attacks type of anxiety, but he's got no problem. He could talk to a rock. If it talks back to him, he'd be happy. He can literally start a conversation with anybody at any time and like make that person feel like they know him. Like he's got like I guess a memorable look for people, because people come up to him all the time and they're like, hey man, what's happening? I haven't seen you in so long. And Rob's just like, he just goes along with it. He's like, hey, how's it going? And he'll just like start this whole conversation. And like afterwards, and I'm like, who the hell was that? He's like, I have no idea. I'm like, okay.
That's funny. I mean, same thing with Martin. We go out anywhere we go. Somebody comes up to him and is like, hey, what are you doing over here? Blah, blah. And like, he just starts up a conversation. He usually does know the person. He literally knows someone everywhere we go. And that's not me. I am like, don't talk to me. Like, please don't say hi. Please don't say hi. Even like walking on the street, you know, and your neighbors like wave to you hi. It's like, do I make eye contact? Do I don't make eye contact? Should I? Shouldn't I? Like, it's really like not that complicated. I make it so much more complicated than I have to. When I was working, I used to get social anxiety because a lot of my customers, I lived in an area where like it was like a big tourist area, so we got a lot of customers that didn't speak English. So I can speak Spanish, but a lot of people don't know that about me because I don't like necessarily look like I'm Spanish.
Yeah.
So I would try to avoid speaking Spanish because I don't feel comfortable doing it, and it makes my social anxiety go up. But everyone in my job who worked with me knew I spoke Spanish. So whenever somebody didn't understand English, they'd come and grab me and be like, "Can you talk to them in Spanish?" And they would like putting me on the spot. Like I'm never good at those kind of situations.
See, I never had a problem with work. You know, we both worked in retail, and I guess 18 years of retail, being a manager, makes you have a backbone, and it's my job. I had no choice. I was forced to do many things that I did not want to do, especially with my last job when I worked at Carter's. I was there for 6 years. So I ran a multi-million-dollar store, and I was put on the spot all the time by my district manager. My last year there, I was in charge of business for the entire district. So like on the conference calls and everything, I had to go through numbers and talk about every single store and where they were at and like how much money they lost. So like that's a big part of like the conference call and everything. And then when we had meetings every few months, she would always make me go up there and do a presentation, and like I had no choice because it was my job, so I had to get over it. But the customer thing didn't really bother me as much. I had no problem talking to the customers and selling them things. But like, for instance, if I have like, if Rob sees somebody that he does know in a store, or we happen to hang out with somebody, which never happens, but like if they have a wife or a girlfriend, it's like the two guys talking. Oh, for instance, like I can think of this example. His friend Matt has a girlfriend, and Matt has a daughter who's like 3 or 4, something like that. So they wanted to get together, and we met them at the diner. And this was the first time I met this girl, and I felt so awkward because typically I normally don't talk, don't really have much to say. And then, meeting this girl, like him and his friend were talking, and I was sitting there like, I don't know what to say to this girl. I don't know how to interact to make it like not awkward. And it was so awkward. I mean, I don't know if she felt that way, but like she didn't really talk much to me either. So I don't know. I'm not like that type of person. Like, well, if you give me a few drinks, I'll talk to anyone, but like without alcohol, I just don't even know what to say, what to do. It's just kind of awkward.
Yeah, I know exactly how you feel. Sometimes Martin will have his friends come over and they'll bring their girlfriends over, and I just like sit there and it's like really awkward to the point where I just like need to leave the room because I just don't know what to do or what to say. Yeah. And I know it's like I'm not being a good hostess, but it's just like, I don't know. In those kind of situations, it's also like really tolling on my mind. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we can be literally doing nothing but sitting and having a conversation, but I'm like exhausted after they go home. I'm like ready for them to go. Like after a certain point, I'm like, okay, time for you to go. Like my mind can't take this anymore. So I don't know. These are some of the things that social interaction may cause the following symptoms when you have social anxiety. And I know I've probably experienced most, if not all of these at some point. And they cause as blushing, nausea, excessive sweating, trembling or shaking, difficulty speaking, dizziness or lightheadedness, and a rapid heartbeat. And I know I probably have experienced all of these at some point in my life or another. I mean, certain situations bring on more symptoms than others. Like For example, when I first started college, not knowing anybody and walking into a classroom, or even high school or school, whatever, walking into a classroom and you don't know anybody, that brought on a lot of social anxiety for me. Also, like my friend invites, when, back when, before we had kids and we were single, we actually used to go out. She used to invite me out to go to the bar sometimes. So I'm like, all right, like, let's go. And I'm so comfortable with her, but when we go out and we're with strangers or with like some of her friends that I've never met before, and somebody strikes up a conversation with me, I'm so awkward. I feel so bad for the people who strike the conversation up with me.
That's why I said, give me a few drinks and I will be your best friend. I may be a little sloppy when I drink, but it really brings out my social side. And I will talk to anybody. Like, I would even do karaoke. Me and Rob used to go to the karaoke bar like every weekend. And like when we first went there, I was like, I'm not gonna sing in front of, first of all, I can't sing. Second of all, like, no, I don't want to go up there and sing. And Rob put my name down without me knowing. And I had to get up there and sing. And after, a few drinks, you're like, all right, I'm going to do another song and another song. It was like kind of addicting, I guess. And nobody gives a shit if you can sing or not. It's freaking karaoke,
Oh, we went to karaoke. The bar we went to was a karaoke bar too. And I never, absolutely not. I would never be caught dead up there. If you put my name on there, I would have walked right out that door and left.
Well, what's funny is I remember my sister got married. She asked me, like, are you going to make a speech? Because I was the maid of honor. And I was like, can we pass on the speech? Like, I really don't want to do a speech. And she's like, yeah, that's fine. I was like, oh, thank you. I thought she was going to be like upset that I didn't make a speech, but she was fine with it. I'm like, oh, thank you. I really like, first of all, I have no idea what you want me to say. Like, congrats.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't do a speech for my sisters either, even though I was her maid of honor, because I don't do that. Even though it's my family, it's like I can't speak in public. I know lately in church, I was going to church for a while on Tuesday mornings. They had like a special service, and it was only like 20 or less people that would show up to this one service, and we had to like go up and like give a testimony up front, and I was like literally shaking, trembling, like sweating bullets, and I was like, my voice was like cracking when I was speaking. I'm like, I told them, I'm like, I'm really nervous. I don't speak in public, so I was like, sorry for this.
I remember when I was in college, we had to take credits, which was annoying. So I took yoga. And a part of our final grade was we had to, whatever yoga pose we got, like we picked out of a hat or whatever, we had to do that pose in front of the entire class. So that's not even like speaking, but that's like demonstrating. So that was petrifying. And then we had to get in like group of 3, and somebody had to write a descriptive like imagery, like to get you to like meditate, I guess. And then the other people had to come up with poses. So of course my group decided that I was going to be the one that wrote the meditative speech. I'm like, oh, great. So like I had to make this whole thing up, like, imagine you're on the beach walking through the sand and you feel the cold water hit your feet. And I'm like, is anybody relaxed right now? Because I'm not.
Well, besides causing physical symptoms, or psychological symptoms that can happen too, which I think I probably have all these too. So worrying intensely about social situations, worrying for days or weeks before an event, avoiding social situations or trying to blend into the background if you must attend. I'm guilty of that for sure.
Yeah.
Worrying about embarrassing yourself in a social situation. I worry about that all the time. Worrying that other people will notice that you're stressed or nervous. Needing alcohol to face a social situation. So I guess you could probably relate to that one.
Yeah.
And missing school or work because of anxiety. So I know that let's go back a couple of years, right? To like 7th grade.
A couple?
Right around what time we met. Yeah, a couple, only a couple. So I remember one time, for example, I was in 7th grade, and on top of all like the changes you're going through, like puberty and all that, I like this boy liked me in class, right? And I never had a boyfriend. I wasn't even worried about boys that back then.
You barely.
But he asked me out, and I said no. And he kept asking me out, and he kept asking me out, and he kept asking me out. So finally, I caved one day, and I'm like, fine, I will go out with you. Okay. So we went out, like supposedly, like we were dating. Even what did that mean back then? It meant like holding hands. Like, but I really, really was so socially anxious that I didn't want to hold his hand. I didn't want to hug him. I didn't even like want to be near him because I was like so anxious about it, so much anxiety about it, that I didn't go to school for the next 3 days. I faked sick. So that's a perfect example of me missing school because of being anxious.
I remember that.
Yeah, but it's so funny because I told Megan, was like, what's wrong with you? Mitch is wondering where you are. Why haven't you been in school? And I'm like, I don't want to look at him. I don't want to be near him. She's like, do you want to break up with him? And I was like, yeah, I do. But I was like, I'm too scared to do it. She's like, I'll do it for you. So she broke up with him for me.
That's so funny.
I know, the drama in 7th grade.
Who knows though? Had you not been having social anxiety, maybe you would have still been with him. Who knows?
I doubt it. No. So have you experienced any of those? I know you were talking about needing alcohol to face the social situation.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I feel like I don't put myself out there. Like I will not actively engage in the conversation. I'd rather just stand there in silence. And I don't know if that's like awkward for other people, but like I feel like they don't engage with me either. So do they also have social anxiety, or am I just not approachable? You know?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a really, really common thing. So I think that more people than we know have this. So I think it's really good to talk about it. I know what you mean, because there's sometimes where like I'll like get a ride, like whatever, like Uber or something like that. And I know like you don't have to talk to, like, it's fine to ride in silence, but like
awkward
silence. It's complete silence until the minute you leave, until the minute you get there. And I'm just like, what do I say? Should I talk about the weather? Like,
see, that reminds me too, like I get my nails done every 3 weeks, and we kind of have a language barrier, so I don't talk to my nail guy at all. And I prefer it that way. But like when I go get my hair done, which is like maybe once every two years, I get a haircut, you know, but I like don't know what to say to these people. They try to have a conversation with me and I try to interact back, but like I'm not actively like engaging in the conversation and keeping it flowing. I just like, I'll stop talking and I'm like,
right, just answer their question and that's it. Like, yeah, like don't engage.
You just cut my hair and that's it. Like I don't want to talk. But like with the cab thing too, like I've taken taxis and stuff, and you know, I mean, it's always been with Rob, so Rob will just strike up a conversation about anything. He don't care, so I'll just sit there while he has the conversation. But if it was me alone, I would sit there in silence. I wouldn't talk to the person at all. So yeah, but like now now that I'm doing Instacart during the day, like I have to talk to people with, you know, when I don't want to, like customers stop me in the store and just like strike up a conversation with me. And like, I try to be nice. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know what you're saying, but okay, you know.
Or it's like the smile and nod thing, right?
Yeah.
Like,
But you know what bothers me also, and maybe this has to do with social anxiety, is that the cashiers have zero personality. I say to them, hi, how are you? No answer. I'm like, okay, maybe they didn't hear me, but say it again. No answer. Okay, you definitely heard me
Yeah.
that time.
They could have social anxiety,
Yeah.
but I feel like when you're working, you have to overcome your fear somewhat. I know for me, when I was working, it's pretty much like the same thing every day when you go to work. You know what I mean? So it starts getting more comfortable. So I didn't really have too much social anxiety at work. Like I didn't miss work because I was too anxious to go in or anything like that. Like you need the money. What are you going to do? You get fired if you don't show up to work. School's a little different because you're more there to socialize. You're not there to make money. I mean, you're there to learn, but mostly to socialize. You know what I mean?
But I feel like a lot of these cashiers, not only do they not answer me when I say, how are you? They don't even tell me the total of my purchase. The other day, this chick literally sat there and stared at me while I'm bagging the items. I'm like, you can help me bag. Why am I doing this myself? Isn't that part of your job? And then Rob can't stand it when the cashier doesn't say how much the total is. Like one day we had this happen. The kid just had no personality, didn't talk at all, didn't say how are you, whatever. So he finishes the transaction. He's just standing there, and Rob goes to him, and this is when you tell me, and your total is, tell me the total. It's like,
no, yeah. Do you find that it's more like the younger generation, like the early 20s and teenagers? I find that a little bit too. I noticed that when you were saying that they don't tell you the total, that something like that happened to me recently, and I was just like waiting for them to tell me, and I'm like looking on the screen waiting to find out the total, and I don't see it, and I'm just like, how much is it? How much is it? I had to repeat it like 3 times because they were like, she was saying it so low and I couldn't even understand her. Maybe though, do you think that children or like kids growing up today are more socially anxious because of like Facebook and they really don't have to interact face to face as much as we used to when we were younger? Like even though we had social anxiety, we had no other choice but to speak to people face to face or even on the telephone. Like we had no choice. There was no like order online or anything like that, like we had to speak.
Yeah, that's what I think it is. It's that everybody hides behind the computer. So nobody actually talks to anybody. Nobody sees anybody. And even with the delivery thing with Instacart, Rob does DoorDash at night. Everything is leave it at the door, leave it at the door. They don't even want to come to the door. Like for instance, today I get home and I put my pajamas on and everything. And the TV was so freaking loud. I could barely hear, but I'm like, is somebody knocking at the door? Like, who the hell's knocking at my door?
Yeah.
And I hear like little kids outside. So I thought it was the neighbor Christian. And I thought he was like giving me a bill for my landscaping, but like they keep knocking and knocking, and all of a sudden the door flew open. I guess I didn't have it closed all the way, or maybe they opened it, who knows. But it was my neighbor, and he's Muslim, so they just celebrated Ramadan, and he was coming over to give me a gift. I guess it's like he told me that they fast and now they're breaking the fast, so I guess in the break of the fast it's a celebratory thing. And he went over to all the neighbors, he handed me some Lindt chocolate, and then he gave me a box of pastries from a Pakistani restaurant.
That is so cute.
Yeah, I thought that was
That's
so
adorable.
cute. Yeah, so it was him and his kids that came over, and I thought that was so nice. But I'm like, who is knocking at my door? Like, I don't answer.
Yeah, it's very rare unless you're expecting someone. Like you don't expect someone to knock on your door. It's the same thing. Like the other day, my uncle came over to visit us, and because he works nearby, so he'll just stop by on his way home from work. And I'm like, who the heck is ringing the doorbell? And I peeked, and I'm like, oh, okay. It's just like always like weird though, because it doesn't really happen too often anymore. There are things that you can do though that to help your social anxiety. So I know one thing you can do is understand what triggers you. So is it like public speaking, crowded spaces, unwanted attention? You need to understand what triggers you in order to start helping yourself. And then once you understand your trigger, you need to face your fear. So you need to basically stop avoiding the situations that trigger it and just face the fear. What you do is you just have to, it's like, what do they say? Exposure therapy. So the more you're exposed to certain situations that trigger you, the more you learn how to deal with them.
Yeah.
Like I said before, like the work thing, like at first you might have social anxiety, but doing it every single day, it helps you to move on from it, I guess. Same thing with doing this podcast. Like in the very beginning, I was like always stumbling over my words and I was always saying a lot more, but now it's like getting a little bit easier. You know, I'm not no pro yet, but it's getting easier.
Yeah, well, like I said, before with working in retail, when I first started in retail, I was very shy. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to interact. It was like my bosses were like, you have to do this. Like it's not an option, So, but as I got older and I started like doing more manager parts and everything, I had no choice. I had to just suck it up and do it. And because if I didn't, I wouldn't have a job,
Yeah, I mean, I still had social anxiety at work, but like you said, you have to do it. Like, what are they going to do? If you don't do it, they'll find someone else that will do it. So if it was up to me, I would be working in a stock room the whole day. Like, I would just hide in there and just do all my work from the back. But that's not what I signed up for when I got my job.
Right. I had a lot of people too that, when I was a store manager, I was in charge of the entire store. So that meant hiring people, firing people, training people. And there were instances where there were people, they were young, 16, 17, and they were very shy, very quiet, very soft-spoken. And I told them, if you want to work in this industry, you need to speak louder. I can't even hear you. I'm standing next to you. Speak louder. Have confidence in yourself. And I think that's what a lot of the people's problem is that they lack self-confidence. So if they're not confident in themselves, then they're not going to speak louder. And how they act at a job is not necessarily how they would act around people they're comfortable with, like at home or friends,
Well, one of the social anxiety things that people avoid are job interviews. So I mean, I guess that's part of it. I guess they're overcoming their fear just by going and showing up to the job interview. I guess that's one part of it.
Yeah.
So that's good. I know I used to do job interviews as well. And we pretty much had the same job title, store managers of Carter's. So so we pretty much have to do the same thing at our work. But my store was probably a little smaller than yours because, it's in the country over here.
Yeah.
But still, same thing. There were some people who were really comfortable, and those were usually the people that got the job, There were some people that were really timid, and, unfortunately, you can't discriminate. So you still have to, but.
Yeah, I mean, I hired a few people that were very shy and soft-spoken, and, eventually I got them to open up and, come out of their shell. And it's funny because, like, if a friend or somebody would come visit, you would see them like light up and the personality would change. Compared to when we grew up to now, we had no choice but to put ourselves out there. You could not go on a Zoom call for an interview or call. You can't hide behind your computer. You had to print up a resume and actually go face to face and have this interview. And that's another thing that I feel like the internet has hindered for these kids. It just makes them totally socially awkward. And that's when when they actually do get a job like a cashier at a supermarket, they can't even answer, "How are you?" Because they just like have no social skills at all. They're social typing on the computer. and they have this whole
I agree with that. And I think that it's really important to make sure that our kids are not addicted to the computer so young. Like my daughter doesn't use the computer. She'll use my phone every once in a while to text like one of her friends, but besides that, they do video calls, they go to each other's houses. I tried to raise my kids like the same way I was raised because I think that it's really important.
I just think that the internet has just totally, like you said, like made everyone socially awkward. And I also try to not raise my kids like that. Lacey's a little more outgoing than Nathan is. So I feel like she's got Rob's side where Nate's got my side. He's a little more socially awkward. And like he'll sit at the lunch table at school by himself and he's like okay with that, And
yeah, Nikki's more like me and Julie's 100% Martin. She'll get nervous at first, like, Mom, I'm nervous, but then when she gets there, she's like strikes up a conversation with anybody, makes friends everywhere she goes. Mom, can we go to their house? Like they're best friends by the end of the day. But Nikki, he takes a little bit longer to open up to kids. But once he does open up, like there's no stopping him, So I think like in that sense, both of them are already better than I was, because I was like one of those kids that was like, don't speak unless spoken to. Like that's how I was.
But I feel like though, like what's gonna happen when our kids or the kids that are 18 to 25 start to have kids? What are those kids gonna be like when they get older? Because now these kids that are on the internet and hiding behind the computers, how are they going to relay anything to their children? Like we grew up, I don't care what anybody says, we grew up in the greatest time, the greatest generation, because we're a mix of our parents and their parents who didn't have technology like internet, cell phones. So we know what it's like to not have internet and cell phones, but we also were the generation that had the iPhones and the iPad.
We were the testers for the social experiments online.
Right. So we learned the internet as it came out and we mastered it. So we have the best of both worlds, where we were playing outside as kids, and now you can't even go outside without your parent because you're afraid somebody's going to kidnap your kid. So I'm curious to see.
It's like, whoa, that backfired quickly, right?
Yeah. I really think the internet is the downfall of our society. And I just curious to see when these kids actually start having kids, if they ever have kids. And I don't know if they even know what to do with themselves to have kids. And but when they actually do have them, if they do, and actually get out there and get themselves a girlfriend or a boyfriend, like how are these new kids that don't know what it's like to not have a cell phone, to not have internet, how are they gonna be able to interact socially?
Well, my answer to that would be, I would hope that we would be raising our kids to be able to instilling things into our kids that eventually they will teach their kids. So we want to instill all of the things that we enjoyed as, children, and this and that. But you want to also, like, the things that you teach your kids, eventually you're going to hope that they will eventually teach their own kids. And if not, like your grandma, so you're going to be the one teaching them too, That's why grandparents are so important.
And that's why half, the grandparents, they have no idea how to work the technology. So they'll just be like, let's go to the park, You know
what? That's better for the kids anyway. You're working them physically instead of just your fingers, on the keyboard.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I lived in an apartment until I was in 5th grade. And it was a pretty enclosed, community, lots of playgrounds and things like that. So I had friends in the community, and I remember being in 5th grade and being out until 11 o'clock midnight and hanging out with my friends. And at the time I had a beeper. That was the thing, to have a beeper. There was no cell phone. So my mom would page me and I'd have to go find a payphone. and hopefully I have a quarter on me to call.
Local calls were free. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. But that was the way that my parents got in touch with me. Like back in the day, my parents, mom would ring the dinner bell and you knew you had to come inside for dinner.
Or if you didn't have any money on you, you'd call 1-800-COLLECT.
Yes, I used to do that all the time. My parents would never accept my call.
Yeah, because you charge them like $5 to accept your call. But well, I know when I have some kind of situation where social anxiety is starting to present itself and my mind starts doing the anxiety loop where I'm like worrying about things before it even happens.
Yeah.
What I like to do is I like to envision the scenario. Like, okay, like this can happen. I like to envision like all possible outcomes of like what can happen. So I will kind of like be prepared no matter what situation happens. So like, I'm like, all right, well, this can happen. Well, this can happen. I can react this way or I can react that way. And that way I'm prepared. So like whatever situation comes, I'm like, all right, well, what did I do in my head? I retrace that little scenario in my head and I'm like, all right, I know how to handle this. I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if somebody were to actively hold a conversation with me, I'll interact with you as best as I can, but it's just hard for me to keep that conversation unless I know you. Like I have no problem talking to you because we talk every day. So it's not awkward.
Yeah, well, the more you do it, that's why you want to desensitize yourself to it. The more you do it, the easier it gets. That's pretty much with anything. Like I mean, I would think that like anybody that has social anxiety, there's all these like, for example, like anybody who's a public speaker, all those people can't be so comfortable speaking up there all the time. Like they probably had to overcome some fears, but the more and more they do it, they start learning tricks and they start feeling more confident. And I think that confidence building is the key to overcoming certain social anxiety situations.
Yeah. It's like, the number one trick in the book, right? When you're public speaking is just to imagine everybody naked.
Yeah. Well, if you're always worried about what somebody thinks about you or what they're thinking, what you're speaking, like that's you not being very confident in what you're saying. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're so worried that someone's going to think negatively of you. So if you thought they were going to think something positive, you wouldn't be that worried.
Yeah, well, we know forehand how judgmental people are. And I think that's why people have confidence issues, because maybe they don't like the way they look and now you're staring at them because you have to publicly speak. Or is your speech any good, about what you're talking about? I know I was forced to publicly speak. Actually, I failed one of my first college classes. It was like one of those intro to college where they teach you how to like balance a checkbook, which is irrelevant these days.
Yeah.
But part of the final grade was to do a verbal speech, and I didn't do it. So I ended up failing the class and I had to retake the class only to have to do that again. So I wasted my time and my money because I took the class twice only to have to get up there and do what I initially didn't want to do in the first place. And even the teacher, which I found interesting, I remember the first time I took the class, I remember her saying that she had such bad anxiety when it came to public speaking that she didn't know if she was going to be able to finish her dissertation to become a professor. You had to do public speaking. And she said that she still like had anxiety to this day. And I'm like, you don't look like you do. And you're a teacher. Like you're literally up there every day. People are watching you, judging you, and you're a teacher. So I don't know. I didn't really buy her story because you said it was so crippling to you that you almost didn't even pass college, but yet you're a teacher. So I don't understand. Maybe she did that to overcome her fear, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's like just like what we were saying before, you know, you do something enough times, eventually it just starts becoming like second nature. You start feeling more comfortable with it, and her job relies on it. She probably has no choice, you know what I mean? Like, it's either that or either find a new career or don't get paid, you know? It's like, she had no choice. But maybe she was referring to like other situations as well too, like, you know, outside of school situations, because it's one thing to talk about a lesson plan that you have already written out and you have everything, all the notes on it. And then it's another thing to kind of just have a conversation and wing it and think of things off the top of your head. Like for me, a lot of the times I get flustered when I have to just wing things. If I don't at least have some sort of outline of something I'm talking about, like winging it doesn't work for me. But I know this goes hand in hand with something helping, like writing down your thoughts. So like when you start getting into that social anxiety loop, I call it a loop because it starts playing in your head over and over and over. Write down those thoughts and then like go back and look at them from like introspect on them, you know what I mean? And then you'll see how ridiculous your thoughts can be sometimes. And you're labeling it as like being anxious, but like really you're like, this is just silly. Like, why am I even thinking this way? Nobody's gonna think this.
So I actually have 5 things that you can do when you're having a panic attack or social anxiety attack. I mean, I feel like it would work for any type of anxiety. So what you're supposed to do is, it's called like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 coping technique. So first, you could either say this, typically somebody's supposed to ask you, but so 5 would be acknowledge 5 things you see around you and say these things out loud. 4 would be to acknowledge 4 things that you can touch around you. 3 would be to acknowledge 3 things that you can hear. 2 would be acknowledging 2 things that you can smell, and 1 would be 1 thing that you can taste. And typically, when you go through those 5 steps, by the end of it, your anxiety has subsided. And I have done this with Rob, and it works every single time.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to try that one day. I mean, I feel like I don't really put myself into too many situations that make me anxious anymore. But it still happens from time to time. Like someone will strike up a conversation with me in the supermarket, and it's like they'll just ask me simple questions, and it's just like I don't know how to respond. Or someone will be like, you know, like the typical response, like, oh, like have a great day, and you always say me, you too. Or sometimes they'll say something different, but you still say you too, even though it doesn't apply to what they said, because you're so worried.
You know what bothers me too is the whole mask thing, because I feel like that's totally taken away any sort of facial expressions that I can give. I mean, Rob tells me all the time that I have a resting bitch face, but also I put faces on that I don't even know I'm doing. Like he'll be like, what's the matter with you? I'm like, what? He's like, you got a face. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know I had a face. But
like Jackie and her many faces.
Exactly. But
you should take a picture of all your facial expressions and put them in like a montage.
Rob's gonna have to take the picture because I don't know when I'm doing it. But like, you know, a simple, like, you know, you see somebody and you accidentally bump into them and you're like, give them a little smile. You can't do that anymore. You can't see from the nose down. So you're literally just staring into somebody's eyes. And half the time I realize.
Well, it's funny because I smile with my eyes. So you can always tell when I'm smiling, but I also I also am pissed off with my eyes too. So you can see that too. Like people can see my facial expressions because I don't like, you know, my whole face kind of like does it. It's funny.
Well, and I guess in a good way though, what I find myself doing all the time when I'm in the supermarket is like, there's music playing and then I'll be singing under my mask and nobody knows it. Or I'm like secretly cursing you out, like, listen, bitch, you better get out of my damn way. And you don't even know I'm doing anything. But if I didn't have the mask on, you'd be like, what is wrong with this girl? She's talking.
Yeah. Oh, I talk to myself all the time. People probably think I'm nuts.
Well, I find that it's easier to talk to yourself when you have kids because people think you're talking to the kids.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree.
I know that anxiety can be like a hereditary thing. Rob suffers from very, very bad anxiety, and it comes and goes. You know, he doesn't always have it, but sometimes when he does have it, to the point where he thinks maybe he's having a heart attack, or you know, the heart palpitations and the high blood pressure and the racy heart and the sweating and all that.
I experience all of that. I know exactly what that's like. I've had panic attacks in the past before too. And a lot of the times, like, bad weather has brought on my panic attacks. Like, I remember one time we were driving and I was a passenger, Martin was driving, and we were on the highway and we were driving towards New York. What?
Was it snowing?
No, it was raining.
Okay.
But it started off like raining, like, you know, raining a lot, but not so bad. And then it like turned on to like a full on like pouring rain. Yeah. And then you just like all of a sudden the clouds just got black and the rain turned into hail. And I started freaking out. I thought a tornado was going to start ripping through and like suck us up. And I just like freaked out. I don't know what happened to me. I freaked out and I made Martin pull over underneath a bridge until it subsided a little, because I was like hyperventilating. I don't know what happened to me, but I was like, you need to pull over right now. I was like, go under this bridge. And he's like trying not to laugh at me, but like genuinely worried, like, what the heck is wrong with you?
Yeah. No, that recently happened to us also. We took the kids ice skating back in like February. And we knew it was going to snow, but we didn't know that it was going to snow as much as. So it was already snowing like while we were on our way there. So by the time we left, there was a decent amount of snow on the ground, and we just took like our regular car. We didn't take our truck that we have. And where this ice skating place is, it's like in the back North Shore, Long Island, which is very windy, hilly roads.
Yeah.
And, you know, there were a few instances where we skidded out, and we actually one time we were sliding and we bumped into a snowbank because it had already snowed a bunch by that point, and it like ricocheted back. And I'm glad that it did, because we almost crashed into somebody's house. And so that was terrifying. And weather definitely terrifies me. And I mean, the car in general pretty much terrifies me, because not necessarily my driving, although Rob says I drive like a maniac. It's other people that are around you, because everybody's so distracted with the cell phones, the radio, now, you know, the touch screens on their new cars. So I'm more worried about the anxiety that I have is what with like other people, they're gonna do and not pay attention. And I drive for a living, so it scares me. And you know, car accidents are pretty high up there. That's pretty scary.
I think car accidents are the number one cause of death. Didn't we talk about that already?
Yeah, until you're 44, then it's heart disease.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We know that there can be all sorts of anxiety. And social anxiety, I feel like, is a number one reason as to why people hide behind their computers and they don't have a personality and they can't interact with people. So you're not alone. We all have some sort of social anxiety at some point in our lives. I recommend trying that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 steps, because I have had success with that in the past. And we would love to hear your feedback if anybody does deal with anxiety and what you do to overcome it. Shoot us some comments or message us on Instagram at candidmother.com or Facebook. So thank you all for listening to today's episode. And we hope you enjoyed it and you got some valuable information from us. And we look forward to talking to you on our next episode. Have a good night, Candid Mamas.
Have a good night.
Thank you so much for listening to Candid Motherhood Podcast.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please subscribe, share, and rate our podcast.
If you have any ideas for future episodes or want to learn more about us, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram at candid.motherhood and on Twitter at cmotherhood.
We appreciate your love and support. Until next time, thank you, Candid Mamas.